My name is Ian Walsh. This is the Moment Money Matters, Hard Money Bankers, joined today with a guy that I've known for a while now, Daniel Harvey. Daniel, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Ian.
Yeah, I wanted to, I've known Daniel. I've done business with Daniel. We've done presentations of some of Daniel's networking events and so forth. I've known you in our marketplace, and you continue to from what I can tell, is grow and kind of head on the track that you set out to head on. And I've also noticed that you appear to be a very disciplined individual in your methods of madness. I'm sure that, you know, I always tell people, like, I don't think I'm smarter than anybody. I'm just more disciplined than um that's really it. Most people are probably smarter than me. And I would think just kind of the way I pay attention, kind of some of the things you do, like your day to day, your routine stuff, maybe that I see on social media or things I bumped into you. I have a feeling discipline and routine falls heavily into your success. But I'm gonna just ask, can you tell us the story about you, how you got into investing, and how you find your success comes to you in what you do
Sure.
now?
I am an accidental investor. So before investing, I worked at SEPTA for 18 years. I worked on the regional rail. I worked on the train. So like anything to do with wiring and all that sort of stuff. That was my job for 18 years. And to be honest with you, how I was raised, it was kind of like you find a really good job and you hang on to it for dear life,
Sure.
right? So I went to Dobbins. I went to a trade school. I was very, very fortunate. In between my junior and senior year, I started a co-op at SEPTA. And after I graduated, I started there full time. So I was fresh out of high school and I had this union, like grown man job, and I was 17. And I was
Making
making
more money than everybody, right?
exactly. So I was making decent money. I started this other business. I started off doing parties of like all things, and I grew that into like a small promotion company. So we got up to doing like about 10,000 seat arenas. So I would bring in artists. Like have you ever heard of and one, like the basketball,
Like the brand?
like the brand? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I was doing and one stuff prior to and one. As a
Okay.
funny story there, I met and one when he first started. That's a whole other story.
Oh,
But
he's a
uh,
local. That's a local brand.
yeah, so and one was like out. They were out the main line, and
Oh,
and so my lawyer knew their lawyer. I started doing this when I was like 19, 20.
yeah.
And so I was one of the first guys to do indoor street ball. So we had like guys from Brooklyn come down to play guys from Philly, and we did it at the Hawk House. Actually, we had about 7 to 8 thousand people show up, and
Oh
so
wow.
we took that show on we took it on the road. So we went to like the Midwest and down south. And actually, I thought that was going to be my path to wealth. I thought I was going to be the next Alan Heyman, but that didn't quite pan out.
Well, that had like a
But
little sweet spot. I remember. I mean, we're probably talking the same age. I remember when that hit the scene, and everybody was like, these
yep,
guys, these videos were coming out, but that was you. I didn't realize you had a lot
yep,
to do with
yep.
that whole
Hey,
thing. So that's pretty cool, actually. I remember that very vividly in my I guess, how old were you? Like 19. So I was probably about the
I was like,
same, about 20
yep,
years old.
mhm,
Mesh shorts and one,
yep,
like that was, yeah,
yep.
okay, sure,
So that was when and one only had the shirts, and they were
okay,
and one used to only do like high school basketball games and college games. They weren't
hmm,
even like they weren't doing street ball, and they weren't doing like the hip hop part of it. And so we added that all in. So we had like
okay.
rappers in there, we had DJs playing, and so that's a really funny story. And had I been more savvy, had I had some sort of like business mentor, I think I could have really grew that. Um, so kind of back to the real estate part of it is, so I was really young at this. I was like 22. And so my mom, saw that I was making money from working at SEPTA and I was doing these events. And so she's my mom, but she is a realtor also.
Okay.
And so she was like, well, why don't you why don't you invest that money? So she didn't want me to do what like young guys do, go out buy, some
Sure.
fancy car, some jewelry, something that right now would mean absolutely nothing to me. So I had zero interest, but it's my mom. So I said, I'll go out and look, I'll fake it, I'll like placate her, and then I'll tell her no. And so the funny thing was, as I was looking around, I was like, you know what? Like this would not like this would make a nice little a third income, right? So I would have my SEPTA job, I would have my business, and then I would have this rental property. I had zero experience. I didn't read. I read zero books, and my strategy at the time was very very simple. I had about 24 grand saved up, and this property cost me 20 grand. So I was like, well, that works. It was a duplex property. It was like right off of like 57 and Hunter. It needed a full gut. I had never rehabbed anything.
And you got 24 grand in your name, and you're about to buy it for 20.
Exactly. So I had like
Okay.
4 grand. So I had 4 grand left. I had zero. I had zero rehab experience and very little money. So I went back to what I did best, which at the time was I would work a ton of overtime. I was the overtime king. If overtime got to me, was not getting by me. That was my slogan back in the day. And so I would just work like a ton of overtime. I would do events. I'd save up some money. I would do some work. I would hire jacklegs at the time because I didn't know any really good contractors. And so that project took me about a year and a half. And I somehow stumbled my way through it and actually came up with a halfway decent product. I put some tenants in there and I absolutely hated it. And what I realize now that obviously I didn't know then was that being a landlord, it that is a skill set, and it's a skill set that I just didn't have. And so I wound up getting that tenant out. I at that time I was just frustrated, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna sell this property. I put it on the market on like a Monday, and I had 2 full price offers on like Friday. I sold it for 87.5, and so I had like no debt on it. So when I went to close and I got my check, I was like, damn, like I had this check
50, 60
that
grand.
was more than me working all year long. I mean, obviously there's some other costs in there, but still,
The light
for like
bulb
a
goes
young
off,
guy.
right?
I'm sorry, was that?
The light bulb now goes off in your head, and you're like, okay.
So funny enough, it didn't go off.
Oh, really? Okay.
It kind of is like I say, it dimmed a little bit. It kind of came on a little bit, not dimmed.
Yeah.
It kind of came on a bit. Just because it was pushed in me so much to find that good job. It never even occurred to me that I could live off of just having a business or just investments. And everybody that I was working around was at SEPTA for 30, 40 years.
Sure.
And I was on that path. I was 16 when I started there. So if I'd have stayed till I was 60, which is where they try to have you stay till, I would have been there 44 years. So that was still my path. But it's certainly kind of like, okay, well, this is pretty cool. Now, what happened was, in between me buying and selling that property, I had actually bought this other building. It was a triplex, because I was still living in Southwest Philly at that time, and so I wanted to move to a better area. So I bought a property in East Lansdowne, and it was from what I call a burnt out landlord. Like they just wanted out of the deal. And it was funny because I think it's still the only closing to this day where I walked out of the closing with money. They gave me so many credits, gave me so much. They just just buy this property.
Okay. Yeah. I've actually never had that happen to me. So that's a first. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was
They literally paid you to take their property.
Exactly. The
Yeah,
first.
okay.
I mean, obviously, I said financing, but
Yeah.
everything else they just covered.
Right.
So So I bought that property for like 75,000, something like that, 75, $76,000. I moved into the one unit. I rented out the other two units. I lived in there for like 2 years. I had met my wife and I moved out of there. The next tenant that moved in bought the property from me like a year and a half later for like 180,000. And I was like, damn. I was like, you know what? If I'm doing this good and I haven't read any books, I
Okay,
haven't read
yeah, yeah,
any field,
yeah.
I may be dangerous if I actually apply myself.
Sure.
And so what happened after that was I decided I was about 30. I said, by the time I'm 35, I'm going to quit selling. And at that time, I only had one rental property, which was my house in Southwest. And that was my childhood house. Um, and I just started buying rentals. And 3 days before my 35th birthday, I quit SEPTA. And then
Oh, you did it. You pulled it off.
pulled it off. I pulled it off.
Nice. I like
And,
it.
and it's funny. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody that I was going to quit SEPTA until about 2, 3 months out. And my best buddy worked there. He was my best man. I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want anybody to talk me out of it.
You know what's really
I was
interesting about that, and that's very interesting you say that. So in a very abstract way, if you look into like energy and like people that draw things into their life and they don't, you got to be really particular with who you tell your goals to, because you can get things and you were kind of like, I don't need any kind of negative energy to stop my goal in front of me. You got to be really careful who you tell, because you got to make sure the person that you're going to tell is going to support that. And if you have any inclination that they may or may not, they might be jealous or whatever it may be,
yeah,
I've found that best in life to keep that to yourself, for strategic purposes, honestly, more so. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It was just very interesting that you kept that to yourself for such a long time, because I'm sure you wanted to tell people. I'm sure it was on the tip
absolutely,
of your tongue. Yeah.
absolutely. And I tell you, the part that it wasn't so much to me about jealousy. What I think what really worried me was their fear.
Uh
People
huh.
will put their fear onto you. It's nothing to do with you. Are
Right.
you sure? You got this job, and I was making pretty good money as far as jobs go. You know, 70, $80,000 a year. And if you worked a lot of overtime, you could probably make like six figures. And I had and and I had full benefits, I had a pension. So I definitely get that part of it. I just didn't want them putting their fear onto me because I was worried that maybe I may start to buy into that fear. But one thing that did happen, obviously 5 years is a pretty long period of time. When I decided I was going to leave SEPTA, I was dating my wife, but I wasn't married. And then when I was getting ready to quit SEPTA, I was married, but we just had our daughter. My daughter was about 3, 4 months old. And for me, taking care of my family, that's a big part of just me. And so I was really, really concerned. And so I was talking to my wife about it. She said, if you don't do it now, you will never do it.
Hmm.
And I said, damn, I said, if she has that much confidence, because it's not like I'm working at Burger King. You know what I mean? Like if she has this much confidence to tell me to go ahead and do it, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And it was the best advice that I've been given. And hands down, it was one of the best things. I've grown so much. It's not just financially. A lot of people think it's just about the money, but you grow as a as as a person, right? As you're chasing these goals, and I've got to meet so many different kind of people that I would have never met had I still been had I still been at SEPTA. I would have still been living a pretty decent life. Um, but it's just a totally different experience. I've gotten to, touch a lot of people. Well, not in a weird way, but you know what
No,
I
no, yeah,
mean? Yeah, I've
yeah,
got,
that would be interesting. Different
yeah.
conversation. But yeah, I think that's interesting you say that. I think the two things you kind of gain. There's nothing wrong with having a 9 to 5 job. I mean, the
Mm,
majority of the world does that. But the mindset that you gain, I think, having your own when you get to what you're doing now. I've obviously experienced that in my life. Is like you feel like you can just create anything in front of you. Like it changes. You don't worry about other people's fears. You don't worry about all that stuff goes out the door because you've broken outside this box of society of structure that just like changes you as a person.
mm,
And then when you have things like your family to ground you and stuff, I mean, I'm the same way. Like, why do you wake up in the morning? So you can support your family. Like, some point you bought enough of whatever you needed for yourself, and you're just
Yeah.
like family, right? So I think that's a really interesting path that you took. I guess most, I don't know, call us entrepreneurs or whatever we do. I don't really like that term. I think it's over stupid, but
Mhm.
whatever that path that we kind of take is, I've noticed when people are succeeding or doing well, they kind of are singing the same song. You're singing like a song that I kind of like resonate to, because I'm like, and I had a lot of struggles when I coming up in this game as well, and then to get to where I am now. So, but everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, I went through that, or yep, I did that, or my wife had, when she supported me for, just like you're saying now, like exact same thing, which is like, get it done. Like there's no other option. Like you do it now, you're not doing it in 10 years. Like
Yeah, yeah.
and
It
and
just
you,
gets worse then. It
yeah,
just
it
gets
gets
worse.
worse. It gets harder. It gets harder
Yeah,
mentally.
harder. Yeah,
And
it
then you
definitely
have a
becomes.
kid. We had my one partner said, I remember when I had my first kid, you probably experienced this. My first kid, my partner goes, there's a saying in South America. I'm gonna butcher. I don't know what the hell the saying is, how you say it in Portuguese or Spanish, but it's, when you have a kid, the father goes out and comes home with a loaf of bread under his arm. Meaning, when you have a kid, you get focused and you make money. And there's
Yeah,
something, I don't know if that happened with you, but it happened with me that like it was like, okay, we're having a kid, and then it was like my bank account like doubled over the next year. You just get so hyper focused on what you have to
yeah,
do for your family. I don't know if you had an experience like that
yeah,
too, but
yeah. You do, and then for me, it's more about legacy because you brought up something that is
yeah,
very, yeah. I mean, I could, I not that I'm super rich or anything, but I could have stopped a while ago. I just said, okay, you know what? Just want the passive income, and that would have been fine. But I want to build something that they can then take and do something even bigger with. But I want it structured. Like I don't want them coming into chaos. You know what I mean? So that's really a big part of where my life is now, and is trying to create something that is structured, something that they can take over if they want to and like move that ball forward.
I think
Um,
that's a great outlook. I mean, I think of the same thing, and then I'm sure you have the debate in your own head with like, man, do I want to hand him this? Like, did I get to succeed at this because I didn't have any other option, because I had to do this well? Like, if my dad gave me this, would I have? You don't know that stuff, but
yeah,
the couple words that you used there were, structure and legacy is fantastic. But explain to me, I'm curious about you, because I can usually spot it in people, but like, what does your day to day look like right now? Because I know you have a bunch of rental properties. You very much seem like a very squared away person. So how does your day to day go? Like, what are the things you make sure you do every day to create that future structure that somebody can walk into?
sure. So the biggest thing is I want people on my team, like it's almost like you said, or not almost, it's just what you said earlier. I want people smarter than me on my team. So I try to hire people who are smarter. Either they work for my company or they are my consultant, whatever it is. And I reach out to those people daily. So, um, so how my business is structured is that I have project managers under me, because I realize that there's only so much that I can do myself. And so you can get bogged down in like that day to day. Oh, I'm gonna go through this property. I'm gonna go through that property. And it's just not. You can't grow that. It's almost there is a limit to which you just
Can't
can't do it.
scale. You can't
Yeah,
scale it.
and
Yeah.
I've done that, and we're talking about stubbing your toe or whatever. Lost a ton of money doing it, but that was a learning lesson. I think pain is a hell of a teacher. It will teach you quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But so what I try to do is think out my day and think out my week, and I try to focus on higher level activities. So where do I want my
Operationally, is
business?
that kind of like what you're focused on? The operations of like of managing like what's under you there.
Absolutely. Well, yes. So it's what I have now, but it's also it's where I want the business to go to next. So I believe that you build that box out first, and then you put everything in. Then you put everything into it. Some
Yeah.
people try to build this machine, and then they try to build all the operations, as that machine is there, and that's chaos. I mean, like I said, I've I've tried that like about 2 3 years ago. Uh, about 2 years ago, things have started to kind of turn like really well. I had access to this private money. had access to deals. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go out and buy all these properties. And so I did. But I still had the same strategy, which is Daniel's going to be GC and all this. So I'm hiring all these subs. And when I tell you the wheels fell off, and the wheels fell off ugly.
That's
But it was
that's one of the
early.
hardest, fastest ways I've seen guys get really good guys, really qualified guys that I'm like, this guy is very capable of executing. But man, get yourself a few extra jobs that you're going to be doing the construction on, and
Mhm.
watch how fast that goes south. Like that is, and really good guys. I've
Yeah, oh
seen
yeah,
like it's hard, man.
oh
It's
yeah. You
hard.
can be. Yeah, I thought I was pretty good.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Um, but there are limitations.
Yeah,
it's just limitations to what one person can actually do. And so that year taught me, fortunately, so just the kind of person that I am, no matter what I start, I'm gonna finish it. I don't care if it's a loss or whatever it is, I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna make sure everybody it is made whole. It may take a little bit longer, but everything's gonna get done. And so I did that, and for like 6 months or so, I didn't buy any real estate. I said, I am not doing that again.
that's smart.
I'm going to sit here and I want to think out a structure that makes sense. And I think that's where a lot of what I call like mid-level guys struggle, because they want to keep buying, 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 buying. They don't take the time to sit there and think out, well, what does this business actually look like? Like I want to be here 20 years later. So if in that year I buy less properties, I'm not worried about it. If on Facebook you say you bought 20 and I only bought two, I'm fine with that. I want to be here 10 years later, 15, 20, and growing. And so that means that I think that you have to think about, well, what does that business look like? Who do I need to put into place? And yes, I may make less on each project, just because I have this hierarchy, I have this structure, but I can do more value,
Sure.
right? And a lot of times people just don't want to take the time. I've spoken to a lot of like mid-level guys that just don't have the structure there. And if they don't stop and actually create that structure at some point, is gonna really hurt them.
It's either going to burn them out, they're going to be out, or they're going to get hurt because they can't manage it and the money's going to get away from them. That's so two things I think about what you just said is that one is that so do you know yeah, do you know Jim Zaspel?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So he had a very Jim does really well now, and he had like I know Jim pretty well, and he had like a similar, you know, I can only do this much by myself, and then he I don't know if he stopped or whatever he did, but he took his business to the next level in a similar thought pattern. So I didn't think you guys knew each other well, but it was a very similar
Yeah, yeah,
process
not
of
well, but I've met them.
okay. So I'm just thinking of him as you're talking your way through this, and I think like the key, and I had to do this kind of myself. I think anybody who kind of hits the next level kind of has to do this, or you're stuck at where you are. Is that like I had to do it during the property management time when I was building a property management company? I had to do essentially the same thing. You go from like being a reactionary person where your business is running you, and you're just like whatever your business is going to throw at you that day is what you have to handle.
Yeah,
To that's it, right? That's the
yeah,
business you run, and when you literally like people are like, I'm so busy. I'm like, you don't have to be busy. I'm like, if you're busy, it means you're mismanaging your time or your efforts. Like, that's it. Busy is a stupid word. Like, it's just mismanagement of time. Then you did the right thing, which was, and back, I had done the right thing, with the property management, was you became proactive.
mm,
So and like you can nod your head and go, yeah, I know. Like, but most people watching this will probably be like, no, I'm proactive, and I'm like, most people are reactionary,
yeah,
letting
yeah.
their business just dictate to them how their day is going to look.
Mm,
Whereas you stop and go, I don't know about you, but the way I've done it in the past, or I even still do it, I usually set like short to midterm goals and go after them, and then work backwards in that box. And I have like my long term goal, but
mm,
it's like it's an overarching goal of where I want to be. I don't like the day to day minutia or whatever that is for me ends up being like the short to midterm goals that I'm kind of like, okay, I want to do, several million here. So backs out to this, backs out to this, backs out to this. And that's how I get there. So we work in a very similar way. And this wasn't like a scripted, sit down or interview.
uh,
So there's definitely a theme to, and it reminds me too of, I don't know if you saw my interview with John Clyde. Like he had a very similar story to you. I don't know if you watched that from Cohen's. He
mm,
he was a state trooper for like 19 years trying to get his 20th year you get like I don't know what left it, right? Just left it into real estate investing, everything very similar to what you said. His wife supported him, everything, and he spoke, and this is a recent interview, a very similar story. There's something definitely to that with like at least at our levels of like gameplay. I don't know. I always say to people there is another level that I don't care enough to achieve in terms of like I just don't like you and I like we're cool with the amount of money we make and
Mhm.
maybe a little higher, maybe a little less, but I don't need to be a CEO of some big $1 trillion company. It's just not my aspirations. There is
Yes.
another level. I will not be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um, but then underneath that is, the kind of the stuff we do and your backyard real estate investors that make it work is what is pretty interesting. That your story, where are you now? Like, what are you focused on right now? Like, what's your short-term goal? What are you trying to get done in the next year?
So my goal for this year was to get to 100 units, and I'm maybe a little bit under that. I'm actually working on a deal now. Maybe that will get me over that. But what I'm doing right now is focusing on multi-family conversions, which is just basically taking properties that I can turn into multifamily properties by right. So no variance, none of that. And it's a niche strategy. I don't have a lot of competition. A lot of investors don't really know how to do it, or they don't want to do that level of rehab.
Some
Um,
of the best deals I see that come across my plate are exactly what you're talking about. When you go
yeah,
from that 1 unit to all of a sudden there's a 4 unit, and you're like,
exactly,
oh boy, yeah, some of the numbers get
exactly.
real nice.
Yeah, and so you create all this equity because you're taking it from this one use to this higher use,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even have to go through zoning. You don't have to go through the variance process,
The
but you
sweet
just have
spot for
to know
sure.
how to structure those jobs. And so that's what I've been. So that's what I have been focusing on now. We are, or I'm currently doing about, we having about 49 units now that are in varying phases. So hopefully before the end of this year, we should have about 25 more done. And then buying more for like next year.
So you'll be
Uh,
hitting so you go, so the phases, right? You buy, build, and then rent. So you're about to go into a big property management shifting phase in about within the next 6 months.
exactly. And so I'm building that part of it out. So I've
Yeah.
hired a person and they're working all that stuff out because I know I was self-managing, like literally, like I was self-managing.
Mm-hmm.
So which wasn't that bad because I do full rehabs. I don't have a ton of issues. Um, because I'm not buying this person's like 20-year-old junk that they've been like stringing along for the last 20 years with
Uh,
their Uncle Bobby and them fixing things and all that. Like I'm just everything scrape, everything brand new. Um, just
that's the way it should be done.
yeah, just much less issues, and I think that you find a better quality tenant, and I think that goes for any neighborhood. So there in all neighborhoods there are people who want to stay in those areas, but they want quality housing.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that I've seen is that in your sort of lower to like lower middle income areas, you have landlords that just don't care. And so they do the bare minimum to like rent those units out. And so what I have is when tenants walk into my properties, because they've looked at the other ones, and they walk into mine and they're like, wow, everything's brand new and there's central air and blah blah blah. I mean, it makes it a no brainer. So generally, all of my projects are rented out by the time that we finish. So as soon as we're done, we're like, folks are moving in.
Already going in, yeah.
Yep. And I'm able to then capture the highest value. So when it's getting appraised, to talk to the appraiser, hey, this is new, that's new, this is new. And it just makes their job easier, like so that they can justify that higher value rather
That
than
makes
me
sense.
putting lipstick on this pig.
That makes sense. And that's the way, I mean, you probably know a little bit about my background in property management. Like, I spent a lot of time on that. And I've seen a lot of owners succeed, fail. the things you're doing are the right things. You know, the ones that band-aid things and just try to play that game, put, take a 20-year-old heater and keep throwing parts at it. Those
Yeah.
expenses. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
like, you're gonna one good expense, your entire year's cash. Then they over leverage, and
Mhm.
between over leveraging, bad parts. Like I always tell people, I'm like, just strip the thing down and build it to last for 20 years, and then you're gonna be projecting your budgets off of, okay, 5 years. I know I have 20 houses that are gonna need new roofs, so you can account for that. That's the way that the guys do it that really succeed. The ones that failed, the ones that I watched get washed out from 2008, were all slapped together band-aid type scenarios, and then it was coming into like what you were talking about earlier, and I'll talk about it with you off camera if you
Hey,
wanted, but
Ian,
yeah.
would you mind? So this is Home Depot. Call me.
Oh, go get him, man. Hey, you're working. Go get him.
All
Go get
right.
him. Okay, Daniel handling some business, and we're back with. But I think we're gonna wrap up, Daniel. I think this is a really good interview. I think anybody that's aspiring, I think you had a really good thing. Anybody that's like a mid-level investor right now that's trying to hit that next level, I think this particular interview could give them a lot of insight of like how to make that jump. Because a lot of times you're blind into how to make that jump. You're not really. Most people don't have the fortunate. You took a 6 month step back and said, hey, or don't have the opportunity, and they just wind up in this grind for 20 years. So I think it'll really benefit that investor. And for anybody that's watching this, though, that wants to know more or meet with you or learn about what you're doing, I understand you have a boot camp coming up. So how do people get in touch with you? How do people get involved with the boot camp and learn more about the insights that you provided today?
Sure. So you can go to my website, which is www.dantherealestateman.biz. That's www.dantherealestateman.biz. On Facebook, it's Dan the Real Estate Man, and on Instagram, it's Dan the Real Estate Man One. I'm going to be having a boot camp January 25th and 26th. It's all about multifamily, multifamily conversions. So that's just what I was telling you about, is how to find properties that have the right zoning so that you can turn them into multifamily dwellings by right, which means that you get to skip the variance process. So this January 25th and 26th, this is just a little, it's kind of like
Perfect.
a
There you go.
notebook that you guys will get, and it'll go. We're going to be going over everything from how I find deals, how I fund deals, how how does banker how how will a banker look at your deal
Sure.
so that you know that your deal makes sense. And then we'll also walk through projects. So we'll probably walk through about 20 or so units. So you'll get to see how that rehab looks. So if you want to find out more, you can go to www.dantherealestateman.biz. Again, that's www.dantherealestateman.biz.
And what I'll do is I'll put in the when the video goes out, I'll put a link in there in the email so everybody can see that as well.
Oh, great.
And I didn't know your boot camp was going to be on that specific type of project, but I wasn't kidding earlier when I said some of the best deals I see from my perspective
Mhm.
are those conversions, those variance conversions. So anybody that's even in the game of picking up deals, like do yourself a service, and if those are the best deals I'm seeing, and Dan does this for a living, and he's going, I got no competition out here, and he's offering it up as
Yeah, I'm
a
teaching.
teaching coach. Yeah, I'm like, create his own competition, maybe keeps him sharp. I don't know,
Yeah,
but go to
yeah.
it. So, perfect. You guys know me, Ian at hardmoneybankers.com, and this is a good one.
All right. Thanks, Ian. Thanks for having me.